I'm Miraculin, and I am exhausted. Welcome back to my Archaeology Minecraft Let's Play, where I bring you along on a journey through our own human history in Minecraft. This episode will be a little bit different, a side quest, if you will. Last episode I talked about the start of agriculture, the fundamentals of growing crops, and how the whole food production was reformed during the Neolithic times. And the next logical step would be to talk about animals. Next part of our food production, right? And so I shall. But before I can do that, I need to lay out some important terms and some important distinction. We need a good understanding or a decent understanding of biology, evolution, and genetics in order to really appreciate the complexity of animal and human relationship. Lucky for you, I did not only study archaeology, I am also a biologist. And in order to discuss a little bit more biology, I want to use an example. We're getting a dog. Let's go out and try to find a dog. I just need to think about which way I'm going so I don't get lost and die. Let's go this way. I've written down my coordinates, I know, just to be prepared. So the reason why I want to use the dog as a good example to explain all these important biological concepts is because the dog is a special case, and most of us are fairly familiar with the dog. Like, we know what they look like, we know how they are, and that makes them a good example. Yes! All right. That was easy. Oh, it's almost like I don't trust it. Let's get one more. Hey, buddy. 2 dogs. Very good. Now, the big question is, how did an animal like this turn into an animal like this? This occurs through taming and domestication and artificial selection. What's the difference? Well, taming means that an animal just tolerates our presence, and they maybe learn some tricks. So by training, you can tame an animal, or it can happen naturally by that animal not viewing humans as a threat and just being totally fine with us being around. Domestication, on the other hand, is permanent genetic modifications, breeding and such to create kind of changes in new species or changes to that species. And humans domesticate animals, but not only animals, also plants. I kind of messed around with that a little bit in the last episode. I talked about how humans changed plants when they started growing crops. And in the beginning, it wasn't like on purpose. It kind of just happens. But later on in our history, like, see where we are today, how much knowledge we have about genetics and how we are in full control over what is changed and what isn't in a species, at least a species in close relations with us. Adorable. So when it comes to domestication, we kind of need to know a little bit about the genetics in animals and species and plants. So during evolution, a gradual change of a species occurs. That's kind of the whole concept of evolution. A species change over time. And this is due to often mutations. And I'm not talking about really intense, scary mutations. That's not always what a mutation is. A mutation can be unnoticeable, even good. For example, blue eyes is a mutation. So is red hair. But mutation can also be really bad stuff, like cancer and sickle cell anemia or cystic fibrosis. There's a lot of different mutations, and some of them changes absolutely nothing to a person. So these changes that occur in species, the mutations, can sometimes be good and sometimes be bad. Sometimes they're so bad that the animals won't be able to have babies or reproduce, and they will die. Really bad mutations will sometimes then just vanish. Like, these changes won't remain. Good mutation could heighten the chance of survival. And in that sense, often they will have even more babies. Or maybe even they will change in a way that mates find them more desirable. And it will continue. When it comes to humans and wild animals, these changes, and if a change remain or if it gets weeded out, it happens kind of naturally and by chance, you know? But when it comes to domestication, this is decided by humans. Humans decide which traits are passed on and which aren't. And often the traits that are carried on and are wanted to continue in that species will become more and more prominent, more and more obvious. Now, these two dogs are completely the same, so that is a little dumb, but let's domesticate, guys. Domesticate away. Whoop, that was quick. There are a few theories on dog domestication, how it happened, how they became such an important part of our life, and the most common misconception is that humans just walked into the wilderness, took puppies out from their moms, and then tamed them and raised them, and here you go, a dog. And that's not the case, because there is an important thing that has happened between humans and dogs and other animals. What most likely happened is that the prehistoric dog realized that hanging around humans was a good idea to survive, and humans eventually realized that having dogs around was also a good thing to have. You see, humans had by this point become really talented hunter-gatherers, and there were probably a lot of food left over, like bones and little pieces of meat, and the dogs would come into the camps or follow in their tracks and eat the leftovers. Not posing a threat, however. The dogs that were more held back, nicer, not aggressive, were the ones that survived. And they kind of got accustomed to each other, humans and dog. And eventually, they inched closer and closer and learned to live together. This is called coevolution. Humans didn't just domesticate or tame the dog, they evolved together, which is pretty cool. The thing is that dogs back then were useful tools for humans. Just like dogs got something out of us, we got something out of the dog, right? They could alert us to the presence of any danger by barking, and they were good hunting companions and tools. Of course, everything in prehistory served a purpose, right? Every man had a job, every man or woman had a job, and every dog and animal had a job. But the thing is that with these complex human emotions, I think it's important to also take into consideration that people probably thought they were goddamn adorable. Thinking something is cute is not a new emotion we've developed, and it is not exclusively a human emotion. It's probably a good thing to remember that humans didn't just adopt the dogs in because they were like, aha, hunting, companion, yes. They probably were like, aww, look at the big head. Look at the tiny little legs. So cute. You don't have to take my word for that, however. There are a lot of burial sites dating back thousands of years where we've found human remains next to dogs. And I've said before that looking into how people were buried is a very good idea to kind of get into their heads about their emotional life and their spiritual life. If they were buried with their dogs, it must mean that the dogs were pretty important. You could, of course, argue that humans were often buried with items and things that would help them in their next life. Or it could be a sacrifice. But it's just often the things that humans would have with them were important. And it is very plausible that the dog was not only a tool, but a friend. Speaking of hunting tools, I wasn't expecting this to go so smoothly right away, so I might actually take my my hunting tools out for some fun. Hunt a little. Keep myself busy while I talk about the evolutionary line of the dog. Attack it! Kill it! Yes! Nice. So the dog, Canis lupus familiaris, and the wolf, Canis lupus, are both descendant from the same ancient wolf species. And at some point, they both split off and went separate ways in life. Go, kill it, kill it, kill it! Now, Canis lupus familiaris and Canis lupus, the dog and the wolf, never really became two separate species. They are closer related than that. The thing is that they are sort of subspecies. Being separate subspecies means that they can still kind of have babies, like a wolf-dog mix, but they are still very different. You can't really consider them to be the same animal, right? So yeah, it is a little bit complex with the whole like species and subspecies, and you don't have to think about that too much. The only thing I want to like remember is how in evolution there are changes, and these changes are either desirable or not, and species can change a lot. And you just see with like all the different breeds that we have, all the different, like everything from small chihuahuas to like Dobermans and pit bulls, and you could assume that breeds were different species because they look so different, but they're not. They're just breeds. They are all the same animal. And how all these breeds came to be is by domestication and selective breeding, artificial selective breeding. And it happens when humans are like, I like this trait in an animal, I like this look, I'm gonna find a female and a male dog with this look, and I'm gonna encourage them to breed and have babies that hopefully have the same trait that I wanted. That is breeding and artificial selective domestication. Now, it isn't just physical attributes that people wanted. Like, it isn't just the blue eyes of a husky or the squished nose of a pug that were fascinating to people. It's also personality traits. I mean, if you're familiar with dogs, you can see that the different breeds are very different in their like mannerisms. A Labrador is like active and crazy, and a Berner Sennen is like slow and steady but alertive. They all have very different personalities, and that has also happened through breeding and artificial selection. Of course, any animal can be angered and threatened into acting like, crazy and angry. So it's not that they don't have the capacity to be something else. But when it comes to animals like this, like dogs, their emotional stability and their personality is often in their genetics. Now, there is a very specific personality trait or like series of personality traits that has made the dog such a good pet. And it's a complex concept that I'm not going to go too deeply in, but it is important to know anyways. So the dog never actually goes beyond the puppy stage. You see here, a little puppy. Now, the dog, of course, matures eventually and gets bigger, but compared to wolves and such, their fur always remains kind of puppy soft. And they never get really dominant or aggressive. They don't try to be a leader of a pack. This concept is known as neoteny or juvenilization. And it happens in some animals that are kind of controlled by humans, either by chance naturally or also by breeding. It's kind of to keep the competition at a minimum and that the dogs won't pose a threat like another animal would. So the idea is that dogs always try to like dominate you and you have to train them really hard, or that there's an alpha dog that dominates the other. It's not real, okay? It's very, very wrong. Don't listen to the dog whisperer. It's bullshit. Don't listen to people talking about alpha dogs. It doesn't exist. It doesn't. The scientist that coined the term alpha, like alpha wolf or alpha dog, had to retract it because he was wrong. And he tried to remove his book and his work because he's like, damn, it was wrong. In a wolf pack, there isn't an alpha dog. There is a mom and a dad, and they decide. And a dog does not try to dominate you by sitting in the couch or sitting on top of the stairs. He's not trying to dominate you because a dog is a juvenile in his head. He doesn't have that concept. They also have co-evolved with us for so long. They are a part of the pack and they understand the concept. They can't be the leader of the pack. We feed them, we walk them, we take care of them. Of course, when it's talking about like wild dogs and stuff, things changes a little bit, but we're talking about the domesticated tame dogs that we have in our houses. Oh no, I got lost again. It's really hard to play the game and talk at the same time because I keep like losing track of where I'm going, and now I'm lost. God damn it. Okay. Oh! Fuck, so the dog is kind of like a puppy compared to their wolf counterparts, right? A wolf grows up, it becomes an adult, it becomes independent and dangerous. I am not saying that a wolf cannot care for a human. Other animals can for sure care for a human, appreciate that they like save them or help them or be happy for the food, but you're taming an animal. A tamed animal is a very different thing than a domesticated animal that has co-evolved with us for a long time. Is he trying to take my bed? Oh. Phew, that was a long episode and a lot of information. I'm gonna take my lab coat off and get out of like hard science mode. But I think it was a good like clarification on a lot of heavy topics, and I hope that I explained it in a way that made it like easier to digest. The most important part that has been like a reoccurring theme of my videos is how humans changed animals and plants. Like, that's the whole thing. Humans adapted everything to themselves and even changed genetics to like work better for them. And that is impressive. So I'm not taking a moral standpoint, okay, on like if it's a morally good thing for humans to like change animals to fit their needs. That's not what I'm like, that's a different debate, okay? What I'm more like interested in is just talking about how humans wouldn't have survived if we didn't like learn how to like adapt everything to us and like to change everything. And it's pretty cool, to be honest. And that should conclude this episode on the evolution of dogs. And in the next one, we'll talk more about like the evolution of bacon, basically.